In Chapter 12, let's look at followership, this idea of being a follower. Now, what do we mean by followership? This is a course in leadership, so we've been talking about leadership, but let's just, since this is a somewhat new topic, we're going to give it a pretty broad definition. Followership is a process whereby an individual or individuals accept the influence of others to accomplish a common goal. So as leadership is influencing others, followership is accepting the influence of others. Now this is kind of a weird topic because our culture is so focused on leading rather than being a follower. Everybody wants to be a good leader, nobody wants to be a good follower. But if you think about it, followers are just as important, if not more so, than leaders. If you have somebody leading but nobody's following, no work's going to be done. But if you have a lot of people that are just working together and nobody's leading, the work will still get done. So the followers are extremely important. And so we can say that leadership can be viewed as a shared process, something that occurs both due to the followers and to the leaders. Now what we're going to do in this chapter is we're going to start off by looking at some typologies of followers, understanding different categories of followers. And these typologies are going to be defined on various dimensions of follower traits. And we're going to use 3 different sets of traits, even though the book uses 4. We're going to start off with the Kelly typology. I'm going to skip the Zaleznik Typology because it's this weird Freudian psychology that doesn't really play out when you actually measure things. So we're going to skip that first typology. But Kelly is the most used typology for understanding followers, and it focuses on 2 dimensions of follower motivation. 2 different traits that are linked to why followers are following. One of the traits is this independent critical thinking. So up here in the top are people that are high in independent critical thinking, who are thinking about and trying to figure out things, what works, what doesn't work. And down below are the dependent uncritical thinking people that just do what they say that do what they're told to do. And then the other dimension is active and passive. This idea of, some people are going to be out there making changes, working hard, being enthusiastic about things. Others are going to be more negative, whatever, just do whatever. And so with these 2 different dimensions, you've the top dimension is exemplary followers. They're independent critical thinking and they're active. They're out there they want to figure out the problems even if the supervisor is not thinking clearly. They want to figure out the best way of doing it and they actively put it into place. So those are called exemplary followers. Then you also have alienated followers who think for themselves but they don't do anything about it. And they just kind of sit there getting upset at the incompetent managers. And those are called alienated followers. If you've ever seen a Dilbert cartoon, there's a lot of alienated followers there. Now, we also have people that aren't especially into critical thinking and figuring out things. And those who are active and work hard and positive, those are the conformist followers who do everything that the supervisor says and are enthusiastic about it, but don't come up with any creative things themselves. And you've got the passive followers who just do what they need to do and get along because they're not too enthused about any of this and they're not going to try to figure out how to do it better. And we've got this 5th category of pragmatists who just say, okay, yeah, sometimes I'll be in one category, sometimes in another. So in this typology, you want to have exemplary followers, usually. And to be a good follower, you should be independent, critical thinking, and active. Often. Now, in real life, if you've got a supervisor, if there's a leader who's close-minded, insecure, egotistical, narcissistic, they don't want independent critical thinking people. And these exemplary followers, even though in positive situations without a narcissistic or an insecure or a closed-minded leader might be the best followers, when you've got a leader that has one of those negative traits, they might be the first ones to get fired. So it's a little complex how this works. Another typology by Chaleff focuses on helping followers be courageous in difficult situations. This one has a moral aspect to it, not just there's a how they deal with the supervisor. The two dimensions focus on the mission of the organization, and so this is especially important in nonprofit organizations where people are working to do something good together. And the two dimensions are supporting the leader when the leader is right and challenging the leader when the leader is wrong, especially when the leader is right morally or when the leader is making a wrong choice morally. But it applies also to how to fulfill the mission of the organization too. Sometimes the leader is going to be right, sometimes the leader is going to be wrong. So again, the best followers are up in this quadrant. They give a lot of support to the leader when the leader is doing things right, but they challenge the leader when the leader is doing things wrong. Now, the other dimensions, high support but low challenge, they're just always supporting the leader. Those are implementers. And that can be good when the leader is doing the right thing. It can be dangerous when the leader is doing the wrong thing. The individualist is not really supportive of the leader, but is willing to challenge the leader when they have a choice to do. And then you've got down here a resource, and that's what most people are. They don't especially support their leader. They don't especially challenge their leader. They're just there to do their job, and they do that. So in this typology, the partner, the one working alongside the leader to accomplish the mission of the organization in a morally correct way, is the best type of partner to have. Now, of course, like in the previous situation, if you've got a leader who's narcissistic, insecure, or essentially just selfish, this partner is going to be very threatening, and they could be the first ones to get fired. But this is a call to be courageous and do the right thing, even when you're not rewarded for it. Now, the final typology is the Kellerman Typology, and this one's different than the other. It's only one dimension, but it's really useful for understanding the importance of followers in politics and social media. And then it's easier to see how in politics and social media it applies, but then you can also see how it applies in an organization too. It has one dimension, engagement, and it goes from low levels of engagement to a high level of engagement. And we've got 5 different levels here. And we can understand these engagements by thinking of social media. Let's compare my YouTube channel with Justin Bieber's YouTube channel. And that'll show you the importance of the level of engagement. So on my YouTube channel, most people who follow me are because I have a series of videos on how to do statistics with Excel. Now that's exciting. Stats and Excel. But there's a lot of people that watch these, and most of them are isolates. They don't engage very much. They're like, oh wow, that's nice. I can learn how to calculate a standard deviation on Excel, and they watch the video, and then that's the end. But there's some people that are kind of like bystanders, and they watch, and they might subscribe and watch a lot of the videos because, oh wow, this is kind of nice to figure out how to do stats in a simple, direct way. And so they're a little bit more engaged. And then we've got participants who actually interact with my channel. And those might be people who subscribe or who click like, or who write comments and thank me for it and stuff. And whoa, I really appreciate that. That warms my heart. And that's about as far as most people. Actually, I think most people are probably isolates and bystanders, but there's a few people that are participants, and there's even a smaller number who are activists, and these might be like professors who include the videos in their syllabus or put them on online classes. Occasionally I get somebody who asks me to make a new video or challenges me and or has found a mistake that I made or something like that. And they're activists. They're getting involved, and I've got maybe, I don't know, there's probably about 40 different schools that are using the videos in their classes. And then there's diehards who are so 100% committed to my video series. No, there aren't any diehards for stats and Excel. I have absolutely zero diehards. Not even my wife is a diehard for my YouTube station. Now, if we contrast that to Justin Bieber, we don't even need to talk about the isolates or the bystanders or the participants. We're impressed by the number of activists, people who are commenting, who are sharing, who are subscribing, who get all excited when there's a new video. And there are, out of his 40 million subscribers, compared to, I don't know, I'm about 1,600. Justin Bieber has 40 million. There's an awful lot of these diehards who eat, live, sleep Justin Bieber and follow everything that he does and tell other people to follow him too. And because of this high level of engagement for Justin Bieber, he's got the 40 million followers. He's super influential. I'm not sure if in a positive way or a negative way. Time will tell. But you can see how with the activists and the diehard followers, leaders have a lot more influence in the world. And so it's the same thing in organizations. If they've got participants, activists, diehard followers, they're going to have a lot more influence in what they do. Now, there's not a whole lot of theory that's been developed on followership, but there is one theory called followership theory by Uhl-Bien and colleagues that's described in the textbook, and it's really broad. And what I've done here is I've first of all taken this figure 12.2 that's in the textbook, elements of followership, and I've made it a lot more complete than the textbook. The textbook just has kind of like the headers here. We've got followership characteristics, leader characteristics, followership and leadership behaviors, and followership outcomes. So this is like everything that has to do with followership. And there's the traits of followers, like their political skill, there's goal orientation, Machiavellianism, all kinds of traits. So I've provided the chart that actually comes from Mary Uhl-Bien's article, because it's a little bit more complete than the textbook. So I think this will help you when you go through the textbook to understand what's being talked about. So there's all kinds of things that have to do with followership. And if we try to systematically put them together, of course things would be very complex if we put everything together, so we'll just use broad categories. We get this figure that's called reversing the lens. Rather than focusing on leadership, we're focusing on followership. And so this focuses on how followers affect leaders and organizational outcomes. So the main path is you've got followership characteristics of people doing followers and things, followership behaviors that are associated with followers, and then followership outcomes that result from followership. And so the main path is down at the bottom here, and that's in contrast to the simple leadership models where we looked at leader characteristics, leader behavior, and leader outcomes. But in this followership theory, we also need to include leader behavior, leader perceptions of the situation and of followers, and so that influences followership behavior, and it also influences followership outcomes. So we included here kind of something as exterior to the main path, but something that influences followership behavior and followership outcome. And so that's called reversing the lens by focusing on the follower rather than the leader. Now we can combine reversing the lens with typical leadership theories with the figure that's called the leadership co-created process. Here you have leading behaviors that are done by leaders, following behaviors that are done by followers. They interact and influence each other. What the follower does influences what the leader does. What the leader does influences what the follower does. And this interaction produces this co-created process called leadership, which results in the different organizational and relationship outcomes. And so here in this model, it's just a simple theory showing that both the leaders and the followers affect the leadership process to produce the outcomes. And so that's the followership theory. Okay, now let's summarize some of the strengths and weaknesses of a followership. Looking at followership is important because it recognizes that followership is a central part of the leadership process, and that's co-created with leaders. You can't ignore the followers, and it's worth it to focus on them. It's a new way to think about leadership, focusing on followership, so it gives us new tools, new vocabulary, new models to understand leadership. And it provides basic guidelines for what a follower should do, especially if there's good leaders. If there's poor leadership, narcissistic leadership, toxic leadership, the book talks about in detail toxic leadership and why people follow toxic leadership. And it provides some basic guidelines of what to do when the leadership is good. It's more difficult when the leadership is bad. So those are some of the strengths of looking at followership. Some of the criticisms, well, it's such a new topic that it's pretty much based on anecdotal observations, stories that people have heard or what they've seen themselves, but not really on methodical research, so we can really say, oh, we should expect such and such to happen under such and such conditions. Another limitation, and perhaps a criticism of followership theory, is that the leader-centric view of leadership is so popular and so important that people might not just care about followership. You're probably taking a class on leadership, or maybe it's an elective, maybe it's part of your major, maybe you're majoring in leadership or you have a minor in leadership. Nobody's majoring in followership, or nobody's taking a class in followership. Everybody wants to be a leader, everybody wants to influence other people. So perhaps due to the human psyche, followership just won't catch on and it won't interest people. Now, I teach at Azusa Pacific University, and we like to reflect on some biblical concepts that relate to these different aspects of leadership. And there's a lot of people in the world who say they want to follow Jesus. They like Jesus's philosophy. They like Jesus as a person, love one another. He loves us. He wants to give us great things in life. But Jesus said, oh, following him is something really serious. He said, if any of you wants to be my follower, you must deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. Now, what does that mean? Take up your cross. Now, during this period, during the Roman times, 2,000 years ago, the cross was the main instrument of torture and execution. Jesus was basically saying that if you really want to follow him, to seriously be a Christ follower, you have to deny yourself. You have to say no to your own desires to follow him, and then to take up your cross. I mean, bring your own instrument of torture and death, We need to be willing to die for him, and then we can really follow him. That's the type of life that he's calling us to, and that's the type of life that we need to have to fully experience the richness of what God wants us to have through him.